Hello, and if you're new, welcome to the Decanting Club. Here at Decanting Club, we like to bring you the weird and the wonderful, obscure grape varieties, or perhaps familiar ones just from unexpected places. But sometimes we like to bring you a classic, especially if that's a classic that's been unfairly neglected in today's wine world, like the Muscadet we had a while back. So this week we have a Riesling, from the home of Riesling, the Moselle Valley in Germany. It's a palish lemon in colour. Now that nose is medium or medium plus intensity, but has enticing sense of orchard fruits, ripe yellow apples and peaches, backed up by floral notes of blossom and a touch of honey. And you should also get a really pungent spike of citrus and sweet spice like ginger. Stick your nose and get a good sniff. You should really feel it in your sinuses. If you can't, by the way, you might want to let the glass warm up a little more. Oh, gosh. This is off dry and has really high acidity, but the two balance each other out so well that you don't notice either of them until the finish. What you do notice at first are the fruit flavours of lime and ripe melon, and these really build in the mouth. Don't swallow it too soon or you'll miss them. They really expand, and that leads on into a long and minerally finish, and it's only there where you first notice the slight sweetness and then the mouth-watering acidity comes through. You can really feel it. This is another backloaded wine, a bit like the Vermentino we had the week before last. The nose on this isn't exactly reticent, but it's rather dwarfed by that expanding palate with its grip and intensity. This pulls off the trick of being powerful without being heavy, and that thrilling balance of acidity and sweetness keeps you coming back for more. That's typical of Moselle Riesling. The region has built its reputation on this grape, which is rather odd because it's only an accident of geography and geology that allows this, perhaps the world's most northerly famous wine region, to ripen this grape at all. The vines are planted on impossibly steep 40-degree slopes above the river, facing south and southwest to maximise their exposure to the sun and to benefit from reflected sunlight from the water. The dark slate soils are also essential, soaking up the sun's heat during the day and re-radiating it onto the vines at night. They're very porous, so they also allow any excess rainfall to drain away quickly. So on the Moselle, it is all about location, 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 because without it, you can't get the ripeness. So German wine labels, especially here on the Moselle, have evolved to be appallingly precise about exactly where the wine comes from and exactly how sweet it's got. Conversely, inheritance laws have meant that each individual producer owns lots of tiny little subplots in different named vineyards scattered over several villages, and he's forced to make a different wine from each one, often in ridiculously tiny quantities. This is made worse by the fact that from the same plot he can produce wines of different sweetnesses all in the same year. This is positively consumer hostile. Enter Andreas Bender, the maverick of the Moselle, who made this wine. Andreas owns 60 different plots, scattered across different vineyards in the Moselle and its tributary, the Ruwer. Most of these are in first-class named vineyards, but he doesn't put the name of the vineyard or the village on the label. Instead, he makes just 3 Riesling cuvées, a dry one, a sweet late harvest one, and this, the off-dry Dajoar. Dajoar in the old Moselle dialect means as before or as it used to be, and Andreas claims that he makes this the way they made Moselle Rieslings 50 years ago. The off-dry style is very classic, having just enough sweetness to balance the piercing acidity you get from growing Riesling this far north. But his techniques are also resolutely old school. He farms his vineyards organically, although he's not certified as such. Practically nobody is on the Moselle. You can't get organic certification for your vines unless they're a minimum distance from your non-organic neighbour. And the highly parcellated nature of Moselle vineyards with their tiny little plots makes that pretty much impossible to achieve. Having got his nearly organic grapes back to the winery, he then ferments them using only the naturally occurring wild yeasts from the grape skins, rather than the more vigorous cultured yeasts that most people use. This makes the fermentations take longer, but induces added complexity into the resulting wine. Those fermentations take place in old oak barrels. This is really old school. Everybody else has used stainless steel tanks for decades. These are not new oak casks that Andreas uses. That would impart a vanilla-y flavour to the wine, which would be just horrible in Riesling. But the old oak does add texture and complexity and a roundness to the resulting wine. He ferments all those 60 plots separately and only then blends them together to get a consistent style in those 3 cuvées. In spite of that unorthodox technique, this is really textbook Moselle Riesling, showcasing what the region can offer. It's perhaps a bit more powerful and a little drier than most of them, but all the better for that. To Andreas, cheers.